quite a bit of inaccurate news, but I do have to say that, and I must say that I want to thank a lot of the news organizations here today, because they looked at that nonsense that was released by maybe the intelligence agencies, who knows, but maybe the intelligence agencies, which would be a tremendous blot on their record if they in fact did that, a tremendous blot, because a thing like that should have never been written, it should never have been had, and it should certainly never have been released. But I want to thank a lot of the news organizations, for some of whom have not treated me very well over the years, a couple in particular, and they came out so strongly against that fake news and the fact that it was written about by primarily one group and one television station. So I just want to compliment many of the people in the room. I have great respect for the news and great respect for freedom of the press and all of that, but I will tell you there were some news organizations, with all that was just said, that were so professional, so incredibly professional, that I've just gone up a notch as to what I think of you, okay? All right. We've had some great news over the last couple of weeks. I've been quite active, I guess you could say, in an economic way for the country. A lot of car companies are going to be moving in. We have other companies. Big news is going to be announced over the next couple of weeks about companies that are going to be building in the Midwest. You saw yesterday Fiat, Chrysler, big factory going to be built in this country as opposed to another country. Ford just announced that they stopped plans for a billion-dollar plant in Mexico, and they're going to be moving into Michigan and expanding very substantially an existing plant. I appreciate that from Ford. I appreciate it very much from Fiat Chrysler. I hope that General Motors will be following, and I think they will be. I think a lot of people will be following. I think a lot of industries are going to be coming back. We have to get our drug industry coming back. Our drug industry has been disastrous. They're leaving left and right. They supply our drugs, but they don't make them here to a large extent. And the other thing we have to do is create new bidding procedures for the drug industry, because they're getting away with murder. Pharma has a lot of lobbies, a lot of lobbyists, and a lot of power. And there's very little bidding on drugs. We're the largest buyer of drugs in the world, and yet we don't bid properly. And we're going to start bidding, and we're going to save billions of dollars over a period of time. And we're going to do that with a lot of other industries. I'm very much involved with the generals and admirals on the airplane, the F-35. You've been reading about it. And it's way behind schedule and many billions of dollars over budget. I don't like that. And the admirals have been fantastic. The generals have been fantastic. I've really gotten to know them well. And we're going to do some big things on the F-35 program and perhaps the F-18 program. And we're going to get those costs way down, and we're going to get the plane to be even better, and we're going to have some competition, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. So we've been very much involved, and other things. We had Jack Ma. We had so many incredible people coming here. Mr. Arnaud. They're going to do tremendous things in this country. And they're very excited. And I will say, if the election didn't turn out the way it turned out, they would not be here. They would not be in my office. They would not be in anybody else's office. They'd be building and doing things in other countries. So there's a great spirit going on right now, a spirit that many people have told me they've never seen before, ever. We're going to create jobs. I said that I will be the greatest jobs producer that God ever created. And I mean that. I'm going to work very hard on that. We need certain amounts of other things, including a little bit of luck, but I think we're going to do a real job, and I'm very proud of what we've done, and we haven't even gotten there yet. I look very much forward to the inauguration. It's going to be a beautiful event. We have great talent, tremendous talent, and we have all of the bands, or most of the bands, from the different segments of the military. And I've heard some of these bands over the years. They're incredible. We're going to have a very elegant day. The 20th is going to be something that will be very, very special, very beautiful. And I think we're going to have massive crowds because we have a movement. It's a movement like the world has never seen before. It's a movement that a lot of people didn't expect. And even the polls, although some of them did get it right, but many of them didn't. And that was a beautiful scene on November 8th as those states started to pour in. And we focused very hard on those states, and they really reciprocated. And those states are going to have a lot of jobs, and they're going to have a lot of security. They're going to have a lot of good news for their veterans. And by the way, speaking of veterans, I appointed today the head secretary of the Veterans Administration, David Shulkin, and we'll do a news release in a little while. I'll tell you about David. He's fantastic. He's fantastic. He will do a truly great job. One of the commitments I made is that we're going to straighten out the whole situation for our veterans. Our veterans have been treated horribly. They're waiting in line for 15, 16, 17 days. Cases where they go in and they have a minor early stage form of cancer and they can't see a doctor. By the time they get to the doctor, they're terminal. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So David is going to do a fantastic job. We're going to be talking to a few people also to help David. And we have some of the great hospitals of the world going to align themselves with us on the Veterans Administration, like the Cleveland Clinic, like the Mayo Clinic, a few more that we have. And we're going to set up a group. These are hospitals that have been the top of the line, the absolute top of the line. And they're going to get together with their great doctors. Dr. Toby Cosgrove, as you know, from the Cleveland Clinic, has been very involved. Ike Perlmutter has been very, very involved, one of the great men of business. And we're going to straighten out the VA for our veterans. I've been promising that for a long time, and something I feel very, very strongly. So you'll get the information on David, and I think you'll be very impressed with the job he does. We looked long and hard. We interviewed at least 100 people, some good, some not so good, but we had a lot of talent, and we think this selection will be something that will, with time, straighten it out, and straighten it out for good, because our veterans have been treated very unfairly. Okay, questions? Yes, John?
Mr. President-elect, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Couple of
On the 12th of January, 2017. Our episode today is a Trump Infomercial. DJ Trump held his first news conference since the campaign. Basically, he's not had news conferences as such. He held one for about 20 minutes. We have it in our part of this episode, coming to you from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network as we continue to modernize our productions in 2017. We'll see you also on Friday Jobber on Friday morning, and on the week that was on Saturday morning, as we normally do. And of course, the Monday morning quarterback part of our lineup. And Sunday we'll have special a presentation. Not certain what it is at this point in time. We have our macroeconomics program, Numbers Man, we call it. It will appear this week also, and we have a number of things to talk about. But nonetheless, at the news conference yesterday, Trump basically put on his standard infomercial. This time, however, he was not on YouTube exclusively. He was on live TV, and we captured it. It was a perfect show, you'd say. He brought out his one of his lawyers to explain to people what Trump was going to do with his basic Trump corporations. Now, realizing that Trump has over 150 lines of business, and basically saying he was not winding him down. He would let his sons run the businesses, but he would not put them in a so-called blind trust as many presidents do. But since he has the Trump Tower and his name and various Trump hotels running around, he will, as they say, be ever present in the public. He'll not only be in the White House, he'll be at the Trump Tower, if not in person, in a name only. Thus, it creates a situation not seen in the presidency. The last time we had anything of this nature was Nelson Rockefeller and his confirmation hearing. But Rockefeller, yes, had his name on Rockefeller Center, etc. But that was in the 70s. You didn't have social media. You didn't have 24-hour cable. It was in its infancy at that time. And there was a totally different set of media placement. Let's just put it as that. So thus Trump rolls on, and he rolls over them. The White House is a bully's pulpit. So Trump is a bully on steroids from some people. His latest victims, Big Pharma. He challenged them, saying they're getting away with murder. No doubt about that, they are. But one has to remember that his fellow Republicans, and this is why progressives in particular and working people have to challenge the Republican Party. The Republican Party is the one responsible for this train wreck. And they're the ones responsible for exempting Medicare from bulk buying. The VA does that. They buy drugs en masse, the Prozacs, etc., all types of drugs there. And they get, obviously, a better price because they're buying millions of dollars worth of drugs. He is now pushing, we assume, the Republican Party to undo that legislation and move Medicare into bulk buying. That will save billions of dollars, no doubt about it. So those are the kinds of things that DJ Trump wants to deliver, and no doubt he will have a recital for now, what some are saying his 2020 campaign. He's planning ahead. Businesses always do, and he's running the White House as a quote-unquote business, period. Well, with Big Pharma, what happened there was the basic pharmaceutical stocks fell from 1 to about 1.2, 1.5% just on a tweet. So now they are the usual thing. We do research, therefore we have to charge high prices. They won't do this. They won't butt heads with Trump. They'll be conciliatory. So thus he's jawboned them. He's jawboned Ford, Dinah Chrysler, a long list of Toyota, a long list of companies that now claim they're going to come with new jobs for the American nation. Although Trump will be adding up these jobs, no doubt about it. Why could not Hillary propose this? She could have, but she was too busy literally looking at her returns from Big Pharma. Unfortunate program to be proactive. But don't be fooled by Trump. Trump give it with one hand, take it away with the other hand. There, let's go to the spy chief and some things. James Clapper, who is on his way out the door, has apologized basically to Trump, was conciliatory. This is from Politico, but nonetheless, he's the outgoing director of national intelligence, spoke Wednesday afternoon with Trump, 5 days after the spy chief and some of his counterparts met with the incoming president to discuss an intelligence assessment of the Russian Federation. The assessment had been badly aggregated existing tensions between the intelligence community and DJ Trump. CNN, BuzzFeed, a new player who is trying to be a replacement for CNN. Other media outlets reported it. We put it on Facebook. Friday, briefing, the intelligence office told Trump about an unsubstantiated private report. Now, this came from a former BBC intelligence officer, detailed how the Russian Federation government allegedly had information about him. In addition, BuzzFeed, published an apparent dossier, which, of course, Trump denounced. I expressed my profound dismay at the leaks that have been appearing in the press, and we both agree that they're extremely corrosive and damaging to our national security. That's what Admiral Clapper said. Clapper's statement represented dynamic turn events in only 24 hours. While Clapper's statement indirectly confirmed the media reports of the briefing, it also could be viewed as a concessionary. Well, the intelligence community, you have to look at it as this. The ones that are quote-unquote intelligence professionals, they will be around when DJ Trump gets in the White House, and they have to protect their jobs. Now, DJ Trump being on a counterattack compared to leaks to Nazi Germany, something he and Steve Brennan know about with their alt-right operation there. It was on Twitter. Intelligence agencies should never have allowed this fake news to leak into the public. One last shot at me. Are we living in Nazi Germany? Well, some have compared his administration to Nazi Germany, and his propaganda operation would make Mr. Goebbels proud. In the news conference, and you'll hear this, Trump defended the comparison and elaborated further. A thing like that should have never been written. It should never have been had, and it certainly should never have been released. Well, the problem here is that these agencies, various news organizations, are jockeying for position. And that has been out there for a very long time. As far as the private security company document, Clapper said, he emphasized this document's not a U.S. intelligence community product, no doubt about that. But the problem with these ex-intelligence officers, whether they be in the U.S. or in the U.K. or in the Mossad, they all tend to have lasting relationships, and sometimes they actually have actual active relationships. Clapper's statement, this is from Politico, incidentally comes amidst extraordinary strain between the spy world and Mr. Trump. Trump seems to be winning it out, but this is at this time. Steve Hall, a former head of Russian operations at the CIA, said Clapper's statement didn't appear to be an all-out apology. Well, again, that is a subjective spin. He just might well be like, wow, this is really has gotten out of control. Well, the whole point there is that, yes, it has, because in the sense that the so-called spy community, 16, 17 plus, is in a position there that they are fighting with Trump. Now, this is the public fight. This is not necessarily the private fight. The private fight is a different animal. That will continue. Old scores are usually very hard to get rid of, basically speaking. While we're on Trump, let's get to Trump drop no deal pledge. Trump will not sell his businesses, nor place his assets in Brighten Trust. We talked about that. He will enter into not into new foreign deals, but appoint an ethics advisor. That's a waste of time. We've seen that before. That's called self-policing. The attorney also promised that Mr. Trump, this is Ms. Dillon, the attorney there, she spoke. We didn't take that. But Walter Shrub, we'll read his. He was at the Brookings Institute. He is the head of the nonpartisan Office of Government Ethics. And we'll read his statement in a minute here. Trump praised Trump in November for his ethics move, but said the arrangement the president-elect just announced on Wednesday doesn't address the perception that government leaders would use their official positions for a personal gain. Now, Trump has pledged not to sell campaign memorabilia, which that's after he gets in the White House. He's selling it now 24/7. In his at Trump Tower, you can buy it there. Get Trump caps, and at his various hotel outlets, golf courses, anywhere else. I don't know if he sell them online or not. I would not be surprised. Period. And according to the attorney Sherry Dillon, he should not be expected to destroy the company that he built. He's terminated, according to him, 30 different business deals. They don't say how many he started, literally. So in other words, this Trump is constantly working. From Norm Eisen, the Trump plan to deal with his business conflicts announced today falls short in every respect. That's Norm Eisen, a former top White House ethics attorney for President Obama. And the warning here is Trump's ill-advised course will precipitate scandals and corruption, no doubt about that. The president-elect has failed in his ethic duties. America will now suffer. That's according to Robert Weissman. He's president of Public Citizen. No doubt about that. And Dillon went on to explain these license arrangements essential to his business. Much of the profit comes from selling his name and brand. He'll continue to do that. And Dillon said whatever price was paid would be subject to criticism and scrutiny. The result resulting in the trusts retaining interest in the brand without the ability to assure that it does not exploit the office of president. Well, you can't separate Trump's brand out from now. His brand is now the White House. Now there is the monument clause in the Constitution, and we talked about that before, that restricts government officials from accepting gifts or payments from foreign governments, not as foreign governments. Trump's lawyers say the archaic is not archaic, it's still there. Doesn't apply to Trump's situation because the president-elect would needlessly voluntarily give all profits from foreign governments to his hotels to the U.S. Treasury. Well, and then there would be the argument on, are they profits? Without a full and complete divestment of financial conflicts of interest, again, I'm reading from Politico, the American people will not be able to tell where the Trump organization ends and where the administration begins. That's from Senator Elizabeth Warren, Bob Casey, and Tammy Baldwin, said a joint statement ahead of the press conference. So they got it out. Tammy Baldwin's from Wisconsin. And this article also refers back to Nelson Rockefeller, that was in 1974 after the resignation of various Nixon functionaries. But Trump has a power of people there. Don McHannon, a former Reagan type, George W. Bush counsel, Fred Fielding, as well as attorneys for Morgan, Lewis, and Baucus. So they're all there. And Trump, I guess, on the issue, what they normally is a germ fight. I'm a germ fight. He doesn't like germs, therefore he couldn't take golden showers. Who knows? Poor Hallie is caught there. I noticed she put a post up today. Anyway, the Trump organization dropped pending in progress projects in Argentina, Azerbaijan, who else? Brazil, Georgia, the Georgian nation, India, and Saudi Arabia. Aide said the president-elect has sold as much as $40 million in stock during the campaign. He settled the Trump University over the period and backed off plans to build a controversial seawall to protect his golf course in the Irish Republic. So a few things, 2 steps forward, 20 steps backward is what Trump has been into. And in the Senate, this is where the action is. The Republicans have been moving on with their agenda. Report here again, Bob Corker, he's from Tennessee. They had a marathon 7-hour votorama, they call it here. 51 to 48 at the end. That's what the Democrats have, 48. The Republicans 51. A rapid-fire series of more than a dozen votes on some of the hottest political issues of the day. The budget is expected to be taken up by the House on Friday and does not become law. It does, however, they are moving this process called reconciliation, and that allows them to pass it in similar fashion by just a simple majority. They don't have to use the 60-vote threshold. And the votorama is a potential weapon of the quirky Senate ritual. The votorama could be a potential political weapon for minorities to force tough votes. And they are working on this. The minority would be the Democrats, sought to drive a wedge between Senate Republicans and DJ Trump, Amy Klobuchar, and Bernie Sanders to allow the importation of drugs from Canada. It failed on a 46 to 52, but 12 Republicans voted for that. Now, this is an interesting vote here that it failed, but at the same time, what that basically means is some Democrats voted also against the measure. Democrats also forced Republicans to blink at supporting popular provisions in the health care law. Gilded tried to block legislation that makes women sick again by stripping the women's health care services provision under Obamacare. Both of those went down in a 49 to 49 defeat. So in other words, one Republican evidently, I suppose, voted for this. And the Senate Republicans dismissed Democrat efforts to put them on a blind. This is from this Corey Gardner. He's out of Colorado. He won the Senate campaign there in 2012. The voters of the people of the state understand that they're playing political games. That is a flippable, political consultants call it. Basically, he's the one, Gardner, and his Republicans are playing political games. Sanders was not impressed. I understand Senator Coker wants more time, he said. Maybe they'll develop a plan, but right now what they are talking about is repealing legislation that would bring, obviously, millions of people and their health care in total disarray. Coker, now this is was reassured after the Republican leadership told him that the original 27th of January target was a placeholder and not a firm deadline to write. This is this reconciliation a bill that plans to withdraw his commercial. Coker evidently got scared. Coker withdrew an amendment. He and several Republicans had proposed to delay more than a month the deadline for the committee to draft the Obamacare repeal. The Republicans are very, very scared of this repeal outright, because obviously millions of people will be left with nowhere to go. The hearings will continue on. Let me give Mr. Strub's comments here. This is Roger Strub Jr. He is the director of the U.S. Office of Ethics. He delivered that on the 11th of January to Brookings. I wish circumstances were different and I couldn't feel the need to make public remarks today, but you don't hear about ethics when things are going well. You hear about them ethics a lot later. I want to talk to you about ethics today because the president-elect has announced the plan he's announced doesn't meet the standards for the that's best for the nominees that are meeting, and that every president in the past 4 decades, 40 years has met. My hope is that if the Office of Government Ethics can provide some constructive feedback in this plan, he may choose to make adjustments that will resolve these conflicts of interest. I'm limiting the scope of my remarks today and wouldn't be talking about nominees whose ethnic packages has not gone to the Senate. But with limitations, there's still much that can be said. For starters, I'm happy to report that not all bad news. The Office of Government Ethics is able to do good work during the presidential transition. I'm especially proud of the ethics agreement we developed for the intended nominee, Rex Tillerson. Mr. Tillerson is making a clear break from Exxon. He's also forfeiting bonus payments worth millions of dollars as a result of the OGE's work. He is now free of financial conflicts of interest. His ethics agreement serves as a stellar model these days, no doubt about it. We have similar success with some of the president-elect's other intended nominees. Some of them haven't quite gotten there yet. I explained in a recent letter to the Senate, but examples like Tillerson, he holds Tillerson up here. We can't risk creating the perception that government leaders would use their positions for profit. I think Politico call this the half-blind trust, but it's not even a half-blind trust. He's talking about Trump here. The presidency is a full-time job, and he would have to step back anyway. The idea of setting up a trust to hold his business operations adds nothing to the equation. This is not a blind trust. It's not even close. I think Politico call it a half trust, but that's not. It's not even half trust. The only thing that it has in common with a trust is the label trust. His sons are running the business, and of course he knows what they own. His own attorney said today that he can't, that he owns Trump Tower. The same is true of other holdings. The idea of limiting direct communication about the business is wholly inadequate. This is not a blind trust, how blind trust works. Here, too, his attorneys and said something important today. She said he knows about a deal if he reads it in the newspaper, sees it on TV. That wouldn't happen with a blind trust. In addition, the notion that there wouldn't be a new deal doesn't resolve the problem of all the existing deals and businesses. The enormous stack of documents on the stage, those were manila folders, when he spoke, showed how many deals of businesses there are. I was especially troubled by the statement that the incoming administration is going to demand that the OGE approve a diversified portfolio of assets. No one has ever talked to us about the idea, and there is no legal mechanism to do that. Instead, the Congress has set up the OGE's blind trust program under the Ethics in Government Act. Under the law, anyone who wants a blind trust has to work with the Office of Ethics, and the office left out of. But the OGE, that's the Government Office of Ethics, have been left out of the process. The government elects attorneys justify the decision not to use the blind trust by saying they can't put business operations in a blind trust. That is why the decision to set up the strange new kind of trust is so perplexing. The attorney said she feared that the public might question the legitimacy of the sale price if he divested his assets. I wish she had spoken with those of us in government who do this for a living. Unlike the president, they have to run the gauntlet of rigid Senate confirmation processes where the legitimacy of their diverture plan can be closely scrutinized. The individuals get through the nominating process by carefully ensuring that the evaluation of their companies is done according to accepted standards. And now that is accepted standards there. Now, before anyone is too critical of the plan, the president-elect announced, let all remember there's still time to build on that plan and come up with something that will resolve the conflicts of interest. In developing the current plan, the president-elect did not have the benefit of the OCE's guidance. This is not my view from the start. The media coverage of some messages I sent to the president-elect sent through Twitter. I have been honored and great privilege for serving as the director of government ethics for 4 years now, but I've been in ethics much longer than having come up with through the ranks of a career government official. Over the years, I've worked closely with countless officials in the administration of both parties. Ethics has no party, and that's the end of his statement, I believe. Now, I don't have it all here, but I think basically you have the gist of what Mr. Straub is talking about, S-H-A-U-B. I think I pronounced his name right here. The job isn't always been easy, though, especially when I have asked nominees and appointees to take painful steps to avoid conflicts of interest, which would happen. Now, some had said that the presidency can't have a conflict of interest, but it is quite obviously not true. I think that the most charitable way to understand such statements is referring partially to conflict of interest law that don't apply to the presidency. The law is 18 U.S. 208 bans federal workers from participating in particular matters affecting their financial decisions. Employees comply with that law by recusing, which is a lawyer way of saying they stay out of things affecting their financial position. That's what president appointees do. The Congress understands that presidents can't recuse without depriving the American people of the service of their leaders. That is the reason why the law does not apply to the president. Common sense dictates that the president can, of course, have very real conflicts of interest. A conflict of interest is something that creates an incentive to put their own interests before the interests of the people you serve. The Supreme Court has written that a conflict of interest is, and I'm quoting here, an evil which endangers the very fabric of a democratic society. For democracy is effective, only if the people have faith in those who govern, and the faith is bound to be shattered when high officials and their appointees engage in activities which arouse suspicion of corruption. The same court refers to so-called moral principles underlining the concerns of conflict. The court cites, and I'm quoting, the biblical admonition that no man should serve two masters. A president is no more immune to the influence of two masters than a subordinate official. In fact, in our common experience of human affairs suggests that the potential for corruption only grows with the increase in power. For this reason, it has been consistent policy of the executive branch that presidents should act as though the financial conflicts with interest law applies. One of my tweets in my letter to Congress cites the OGE's opinion issued during the Reagan administration that articulates the various policies. Back when he was working for the Department of Justice, the late Antonin Scalia also wrote an opinion declaring that a president should avoid engaging in conflict prohibited by the government ethics regulations, even if they don't apply. Justice Scalia warned that there would be the consequences if a president ever failed to adhere to the same standards that apply to lower federal officials. The sheer obviousness of Justice Scalia's words become apparent if you ask yourself one question: should a president hold himself to a lower standard than his appointees? I appreciate the divestiture can be costly, but the president-elect would not be alone in making that sacrifice. I've been involved in just about every presidential nomination in the past 10 years. I've been involved in ethics reviews of presidents, vice presidents, and most top officials. It's important to understand that the president is now entering the world of public service. He's going to be asked, his own appointees, to make sacrifices. He's going to be asking our men and women in uniform to risk their lives in conflicts around the world. So no, I don't think a divestiture is too high a price to pay to be president of the United States. As we all know, one of the things that makes America truly great is its system preventing public corruption. They call it transparency in government when they're talking to emerging nations. For a long time now, the OGE has helped developing countries set up their own system for detecting and preventing conflicts of interest. Our executive branch ethics program is considered the gold standard internationally and has served as a model for the world. But programs that started with the office of president, the president-elect, must show those in a government and those coming into government after his inauguration that ethics matter. And all of this is to say there's a reason why experts and others are expressing concern. These calls for the divestiture have been bipartisan. You have the example of President Obama's Ethics Council, Norm Eason, and President Bush's counsel, Mr. Painter, and the conservative Wall Street Journal recommends divestiture, and so does the columnist Peggy Nguyen. It's a plan to see that none of this reflects on any partisan motivation. All you have to do is imagine what will happen if the president-elect takes the advice and divests. He'll be stronger. He'll be a better chance of succeeding. And so will the ethics programs and the government as a whole, and in turn, the America will have a better chance of succeeding. We should all want that, and I know I want that. In closing, I would just like to add that I'm happy to offer my assistance and the assistance of my staff. Thank you. This was at the Brookings Institute that Mr. Shrub made that statement. If you always read it in its entirety, we usually don't read things in its entirety. But on to the sport of the day and Mr. Floyd Mayweather, who is contemplating another fight with somebody named McGregor. Evidently, McGregor's made a few $1,000,000. He wants more. McGregor is 28 years old. Mr. Mayweather is 40 years old. And they're talking about the take from the pay TV. We're willing to give him $15 million. That's according to Mr. Mayweather there. And can a guy talk about making 20 or 30 if he's never made 8 or 9? And no doubt about it, Mayweather would carry this card. There's no doubt if we look into sporting. Mayweather took things one step when he obtained a license to box in California. Now, Connor's boxing dominated social media here, and I don't know who Mr. McGregor is there, but this is some of the musings that are going on. He's evidently champion of what is he champion of? The UFC anyway. Blowing smoke. Conor McGregor. I don't know anything about Conor McGregor. Period. Here, we'll look very quickly, and we'll go and do the NBA scores. This is this McGregor character. He's 5'9", 28 years old. He's an Irish citizen. That makes sense. And he is an Irish professional mixed martial arts. Currently, I see. Ultimate fighting champion. Anyway, this is one step below the infamous Trump Infomercial. I guess it's a time to say. It claims he offered the champ $15 million to fight. This is Mr. Floyd Mayweather. We won't spend much time with that, but evidently they are trying to find somebody. So as we wind down here, we'll give the basketball scores. I don't know what the latest is on the playoffs coming up this weekend. We'll go into those tomorrow night and on the week, but was nonetheless on the 11th. The Knickerbockers were at the 76ers. 76ers 98-97. The Grizzlies were at the Thunder in OKC 103-95. The T-Wolves, the Rockets were at the T-Wolves. T-Wolves 119-105. The Wizards were in Boston. The Celtics 117-108 over the Wizards. The Magic and the LA Clippers. LA Clippers 105-96. The Cavaliers were out in Portland. The Blazers 102-86 are there. To the NFL. Let's see if we find anything here on the playoffs. Not sure if we will. We can tell you. They offer live coverage here. Well, anyway. The race to the Super Bowl. New England and the Dallas Cowboys. They, of course, the top seeds. We'll have Houston at New England. That will be on Saturday the 14th. And that will be on CBS. And let me get rid of this sound here. Echoing into my mic. That's the AFC divisional rounds there. We'll have that. And also on, let me see, make sure. This will be Houston and New England. And then we'll have Pittsburgh at Kansas City. That will be on Sunday. I think Kansas City is favored in that game. And in the NFC playoffs, we'll have Seattle at the Falcons. That will be on Saturday, the Saturday game. And then Green Bay will be at number 1 Cowboys. The Cowboys, of course, are favored there. And, okay, this is a wild card game. Sorry about that. So we moved basically through much of it. Saturday game, we'll have Houston and the Texans, and they'll be playing in Foxborough. And then on Sunday, just repeating this, the Steelers will be at Kansas City. And the NFC, Seattle will journey to Atlanta. I believe Atlanta is favored in that particular round. And the Cowboys are. So that is where the playoffs are. We'll be looking at that. We'll look at ELO, and we'll look at a number of things. This will do it for us. We'll see you on the Monday morning quarterback. The title of this episode, the Trump Infomercial, or Infomercial, however you want to pronounce it. Mr. Trump, and we'll hear from Mr. Trump in the time permitting. On some of these channels, obviously, we'll hear the whole 20 minutes of DJ Trump. Good day.
Quite a bit of inaccurate news, but I do have to say that, and I must say that I want to thank a lot of the news organizations here today because the committee, and they were unable to break through. We have to do that for our country. It's very important.
Attempts to build a better relationship with President Putin?
Well, you know, President Putin and Russia put out a statement today that this fake news was indeed fake news. They said it totally never happened. Now, somebody would say, oh, of course he's going to say that. I respected the fact that he said that. And I'll be honest, I think if he did have something, they would have released it. They would have been glad to release it. I think, frankly, had they broken into the Republican National Committee, I think they would have released it just like they did about Hillary and all of the horrible things that her people, like Mr. Podesta, said about her. I mean, what he said about her was horrible. If somebody said about me what Podesta said about Hillary, I was the boss, I would have fired him immediately, or that person, because what he said about her was horrible. But remember this, we talk about the hacking, and hacking's bad, and it shouldn't be done. But look at the things that were hacked. Look at what was learned from that hacking. That Hillary Clinton got the questions to the debate and didn't report it? That's a horrible thing. That's a horrible thing. Can you imagine that if Donald Trump got the questions to the debate, it would have been the biggest story in the history of stories, and they would have said, immediately you have to get out of the race. Nobody even talked about it. It's a very terrible thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. On that intelligence report, the second part of their conclusion was that Vladimir Putin ordered it because he aspired to help you in the election. Do you accept that part of the finding, and will you undo what President Obama did to punish the Russians for this, or will you keep it in place?
If Putin likes Donald Trump, I consider that an asset, not a liability, because we have a horrible relationship with Russia. Russia can help us fight ISIS, which, by the way, is number one tricky. I mean, if you look, this administration created ISIS by leaving at the wrong time. The void was created, ISIS was formed. If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability. Now, I don't know that I'm going to get along with Vladimir Putin. I hope I do, but there's a good chance I won't. And if I don't, do you honestly believe that Hillary would be tougher on Putin than me? Does anybody in this room really believe that? Give me a break. Okay.
Can you make clear whether during your visits to either Moscow or St. Petersburg you engaged in conduct that you now regret, and that a reasonable observer say that you are potentially vulnerable to blackmail by Russia or by its intelligence agencies?
Let me just tell you what I do. When I leave our country, I'm a very high-profile person, would you say? I am extremely careful. I'm surrounded by bodyguards. I'm surrounded by people. And I always tell them, anywhere, but I always tell them, if I'm leaving this country, be very careful, because in your hotel rooms, and no matter where you go, you're going to probably have cameras. I'm not referring just to Russia, but I would certainly put them in that category. And number one, I hope you're going to be good anyway. But in those rooms, you have cameras in the strangest places. Cameras that are so small with modern technology, you can't see them and you won't know. You better be careful, or you'll be watching yourself on nightly television. I tell this to people all the time. I was in Russia years ago with the Miss Universe contest, which did very well. Moscow, the Moscow area, did very, very well. And I told many people, be careful, because you don't want to see yourself on television. Cameras all over the place. And again, not just Russia, all over. Does anyone really believe that story? I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me.
How you plan to disentangle yourself from your business, but first, I have to follow up on some of these Russia remarks. Based on your comments here today, do you believe the hacking was justified? Does Russia have any leverage over you, financial or otherwise? And if not, will you release your tax returns to prove it?
So I tweeted out that I have no dealings with Russia. I have no deals in Russia. I have no deals that could happen in Russia because we've stayed away. And I have no loans with Russia. As a real estate developer, I have very, very little debt. I have assets that are, and now people have found out how big the company is. I have very little debt. I have very low debt. But I have no loans with Russia at all. And I thought that was important to put out. I certify that. So I have no deals. I have no loans. And I have no dealings. We could make deals in Russia very easily if we wanted to. I just don't want to because I think that would be a conflict. So I have no loans, no dealings, and no current pending deals. Now, I have to say one other thing. Over the weekend, I was offered $2 billion to do a deal in Dubai with a very, very, very amazing man, a great, great developer from the Middle East, Hussein Damak, a friend of mine, great guy, and was offered $2 billion to do a deal in Dubai, number of deals. And I turned it down. I didn't have to turn it down because, as you know, I have a no-conflict situation because I'm president, which is, I didn't know about that until about 3 months ago, but it's a nice thing to have. But I don't want to take advantage of something. I have something that others don't have. Vice President Pence also has it. I don't think he'll need it. I have a feeling he's not going to need it. But I have a no conflict of interest provision as president. It was many, many years old. This is for presidents because they don't want presidents getting, I understand, they don't want presidents getting tangled up in minutiae. They want a president to run the country. So I could actually run my business. I could actually run my business and run government at the same time. I don't like the way that looks, but I would be able to do that if I wanted to. I'd be the only one that would be able to do that. You can't do that in any other capacity. But as a president, I could run the Trump Organization, great, great company, and I could run the company, the country. I do a very good job, but I don't want to do that. Now, all of these papers that you see here, yes, go ahead, Haley. Sure.
Conflicts. Do you believe the hacking was justified, and will you release your tax returns to prove what you're saying about no deals in Russia?
Well, I'm not releasing the tax returns because, as you know, they're under audit.
Since the 70s, has had a required audit from the IRS. The last 6 have released him, but as president, sir,
you know, the only one that cares about my tax returns are the reporters. Okay, they're the only ones. But no, I don't think so. I won. I mean, I became president. No, I don't think they care at all. I don't think they care at all. I think you care. I think you care. First of all, you learn very little from a tax return. What you should do is go down to federal elections and take a look at the numbers. And actually, people have learned a lot about my company. And now they realize my company is much bigger, much more powerful than they ever thought. We're in many, many countries, and I'm very proud of it. And what I'm going to be doing is my 2 sons, who are right here, Don and Eric, are going to be running the company. They are going to be running it in a very professional manner. They're not going to discuss it with me. Again, I don't have to do this. They're not going to discuss it with me. And with that, I'm going to bring up